Okay, that's one thing. So, deepfake. The interesting part about deepfakes is it's a fairly recent phenomenon. So what we're going to do is, from an agenda perspective, the purpose of this whole discussion is to let you know this is not, yes, it's scary and it's troublesome and it's disruptive, but I'm trying to demystify this a bit. You don't have to be afraid. There is a way to resolve this and be prepared for it. I've seen how it works inside of Maverick and the things that have been done even before I got to Maverick, and how they're continuing to iterate, and we want to share some of those things with you so you might be able to, whether you're using a Maverick product or not, go back and have some smart ideas to help your dealerships with, because they're coming to you first. I mean, it's the compliance officers, the directors, they're like, I don't know what to do. I know I need to sell cars off-site because there's people out there that are competing with us that are going to take our lunch money if we don't, right? So we're going to demystify that. One thing I would always tell you is when you hear a cool buzzword, that is an entrepreneur that made it up because they want you to come to them for that buzzword, okay? Before AI, it was something else. Who's heard of blockchain? Woo! Blockchain, whoop-de-doo. So there's lots of other ones like that we could talk about. So I want to talk about a little bit, we're going to talk about the history of AI, and then I'm going to go through the anatomy of what actually makes a deepfake. So in that portion, y'all may have to tell me to skip because it's going to be a little bit more highly technical. I went to LSU, so that in and of itself is a struggle. And so we're going to go through some acronyms. You'll learn a few things, maybe get knowledgeable. Happy to share this presentation with you. And then I'm going to talk to you about how you securely execute offsites, and just to simplify it, how do we outfake the deepfake? Okay? So, pop quiz. I don't know if there's points from Tony D on this. Who invented AI and when?
The government.
Okay, let me start back. Who knows what AI stands for? Oh, very good. Okay, so I always have this little funny joke because back about 10 years ago, the big buzzword in DMS was API. Who knows what API stands for? Not a lot of people. So I always joke that, well, because nobody could figure out what API stood for, they took out the P. But it actually stands for Application Programming Interface. We have to deal with those all the time. So actually, artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 by a guy named John McCarthy. Artificial intelligence, in theory, has been out there for years. Even going back to, I watched Gladiator 2 the other day, and they would if they didn't like you or they wanted to change history or do a deep fake, they would chisel your name out of the stone like you never existed, if anybody's seen what happened to Maximus. So it's just he coined the phrase, right? He created his own economy of words. So who remembers Skynet? This was like, I just skipped like 30 years, but, you know, as Arnold says, I'll be back. But Skynet was fascinating because I think it was about this time, they were like in the year 2020 something, robots were going to take over and they just decided we were no longer necessary to their existence, right? So if you go back and watch that now, and you're like, holy crap, James Cameron, insane director. He also used a bunch of AI technology to make Titanic, which I think is also fascinating. But you know, Skynet kind of crystallized a lot of what deepfake AI today is doing, in theory. So kind of a brilliant concept. So a couple things, I'll jump forward. Who remembers IBM? They beat a grandmaster in chess in 1997 with their supercomputer Deep Blue, and then IBM Watson, which, when I was a kid, I thought Watson was after like the other guy from Sherlock Holmes. It was actually the founder of IBM was named Thomas Watson. And in 2011, they beat the Jeopardy champions. And so these are just key milestones in the development of artificial intelligence that indicate when it's gotten to a level of awareness where it could potentially argue that it could replace us, right? A couple other things. Here's your first acronym. I pressed the wrong button. So this one's a meal. Generative adversarial network. The word I want you to hear is generative. So what you hear today is called generative AI, correct? Have y'all heard of generative AI? It's like, oh, it's not just AI, it's generative AI. Wow. So a guy named Ian Longfellow who worked for Google, I think he was a gamer, and created the generative adversarial network. So essentially what he did was he created two programs operating in parallel that were competing against each other to create learning. That's what a generative adversarial network does, adversarial being the key word. And so what it's doing is it's taking what's real and then creating versions of what's not, and then seeing how close it can get to real to where it actually gets through it and passes, okay? Think about how this could work as you're trying to replace people's faces and videos and voices, right? So anyways, super smart stuff. As we've progressed, I'm going to get to this chart in a minute. I'm going to actually just write it here because that's way too complicated. Does anybody remember what happened at Facebook when they tried to create their first AI chatbot, Alice and Bob? 2017, it's worth a Google. Alice and Bob were created to go get good at negotiating. And so Facebook was thinking like, oh cool, we'll go teach organizations how to get rid of salespeople. We'll just have AI negotiators to go do it for us. And unfortunately or fortunately, the chatbots decided that English was not an efficient enough language and way to converse, so they created their own language and became incoherent to the human race, and then they ended up just having to turn it off. That was in 2017. It's not that long ago, right? It's just Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg lost a lot of money on that. I think he's okay. But anyways, this graph is showing that, hey, basic stuff, right? Human race, evolution. We're doing this, and this. I'm going to put a point in time in the year 2020. There's a little bit of a hook later. And then what's happened over time is AI is doing this, and this, right? Okay? Now, just to make you feel better, some interesting stats have shown that the reason AI has gotten so much smarter is the data is so much more readily available to learn and put in the models. So there is going to be a point in time, and some people are saying it's next year, some people are saying it's 5 years from now, where it's going to start running out of the mass aggregation of data, and potentially it's going to plateau off. But this, what's up on the slide, shows how it's acquired the different skills over time, which is just a different way of looking at it. You try to put it into pieces, just like we reduce to the ridiculous. So if I'm reducing to the ridiculous in this graph, what it's showing is it's acquired all the basic skills to make it seem like a human, and then what's really gotten it to perform differently is it took advantage of the time we were all locked up during COVID and really figured out predictive reasoning, because there was a lot more of us online, a lot more of us on social media, a lot more content to consume, and we didn't have anything else to do. So it got really good at that. So we'll talk about what that means in a second. Okay, so who knows what happened in 2020? This is my first funny slide. Sorry, this was a group of people who wanted to go to a restaurant, and the restaurant was in social distancing rules. So they made you put pool noodles on your head to keep everybody apart. And I just thought, man, you really want to go out to eat. But I guess people did it. And so, I think if we look back in history, 50 years from now, we're going to look at 2020 as such a huge inflection point in humanity, right? I mean, we fundamentally changed as a race. I feel like, and this is why I say in 2020, I just feel like the growth curve did one of these. This is the Bible of Rudy here. I just feel like I got dumber for a couple of years. Okay, y'all don't have to answer that. But I think we all got a little weird in those couple of years. We thought the world was going to come to an end. We had a lot of loved ones die. There's the whole vaccination thing, all the politics and the insanity there. And we had to, people stopped going to the office. We had to go remote. Now we're coming back. But we started thinking about lots of different things and not about what's going on in AI, and that was their great chance to get ahead of us. So, a couple other things that were going on in 2020 that we did do as we got dumber. What was the most popular streaming show in 2020? Who wants to guess? Tiger King. Very good. I didn't even tell him to say that. So, Tiger King, Joe Exotic. And I full disclosure, I never actually watched the full shows. I couldn't take it, but I was just fascinated at how fascinated we are. We're really, this is what we've come to. For me, it's either this or Costco. I'm not sure which one's more predictive of the end of the human race, in my opinion. So Joe Exotic was huge. Everybody knows he was a bit of a crook. He was crazy, Carol Baskins, all that stuff. And we were so busy consuming this kind of stuff Talk about garbage in, garbage out, right? It was so bad that I thought I was going to be funny and poetic. I actually dressed up as Tiger King for Halloween. So I made an attempted deep fake. Now, I will tell you, there's several cues that would tell you this was wrong, okay? I promised Thane I'd put in something funny and embarrassing. But I did do my own generative adversarial network just without a computer. So that's what ended up happening. That's probably better than some of the deep fakes out there. I don't know. I should give it a shot. But they put him in jail, so I just decided that's not a good idea. So, all right, I'm going to tell you you don't need to learn this. It's called a variational autoencoder. It is taking that generative adversarial network technology, and it is actually creating code that can take images or videos or sounds. It sucks it down and kind of brings it into the base elements, and then takes additional programs and algorithms and allows you to reconstruct that into what they want you to see. Okay? And the science of it is very complicated, but I just want you to hear a variational autoencoder. You can Google it. It's on the web. You can go buy these things. The Geek Squad has all this stuff. Fun fact about deepfake, or maybe not so fun, deepfake started with gamers and people trying to do revenge porn for whatever reason in 2017, 18. And then they're like, oh, if I can get away with making you look like another person naked, I'm sure I can make you look like somebody I want you to be to go steal a car or a house or something like that, right? So it's a pretty sophisticated technology, but keep in mind, this is still just advanced computing. This is not a fourth dimension or some new whiz-bang. It is just a level of focus that we had not seen before. And if y'all live in areas where they're putting data centers, they're running out of grid to provide in these data centers because they're running so much computing power. So it's really just a race for space to run these things. It's not something totally out of this world. We can beat this, okay? But ultimately, once the encoded sets get trained enough, you can make it look like a real thing, okay?
Take this case in Florida. The owner of a title company, Lauren Albrecht, was trying to verify the identity of a woman who was selling property.
Margaret?
And luckily, caught on.
After the second pause, I realized this is 100% a video playing on a loop. It is not real.
Her first clue?
Margaret, can you raise your right hand?
The fake person could not. That's a red flag, but not every scam gets caught.
We are seeing horrible extortions that are happening to individuals, to grandmas, to grandpas. We're seeing CEOs being attacked. We're seeing organizations being attacked.
So just FYI, this was from late 2022, early 2023. So that's why it did. I think to our trained eye, we're we got that. They've gotten much better, right? But it's just we're not talking about it enough. So what a finished deepfake looks like is, now they're looking at lighting and they're looking at different poses. And remember, if you're online a lot and you're doing a lot of posts, and if this goes on, if they post this somewhere, somebody can be training on my face right now. I'd like it if they put me in a Porsche instead of a Sonata, but whatever, they can do it. Okay. So, you've got the encoder, you've got the faces, and then one other thing is synthetic voice and video dialogue replacement. Synthetic voice apparently has been out there for a while, and I'm not talking about the Jerky Boys back 30 years ago. This is actually pretty cool tech, and the voice part has been around longer, which I was, sorry I did that. And then video dialogue replacement is specific technology that goes around your mouth, and it makes your lips so if somebody was a lip reader, it would look like the words that is coming through the synthetic voice. So, they're doing a good job with creating that product. I would say it could be used for good, but it's probably being used more for bad, right? So, one more. Here he is. Did I press it? I got a deep fake. Can we go back? Looks like he killed it.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
That's my best video.
We're not reconnecting.
Yes, it was a synthetic encoder. That's why you prep, you play all the videos, and it still doesn't work. Okay. Well, I'll let these guys try and get it back, but that video is pretty good. But it's actually in the video, he takes I think we did that already. In the video, he takes the reporter and does a deep fake of her on the fly on the call, right? And it shows how it's not just about, oh, I can create a reel or a clip, which is what was done in the video with the title company. There's actually technology now where you're live in a video chat, right? And it can superimpose somebody's face and look real and pull it off if you're not paying attention. So that's what that does. It's moderately terrifying, but it's just all about seeing is not believing any longer. So we can go to the next one, guys. It's fine. Okay, so basic things. We're going to talk about how we stop it. All this sounds self-explanatory. I'm going to go to level 0. Level 0 is where the dealerships are today. And we'll talk about normal stuff that we should be doing, but if you go to a dealership, this is pop quiz. If you go to a dealership and you say, I want to test drive a car, okay, or I want to buy a car, either way, and they're starting their process, what do they get? They get a deal jacket. So what's the first thing they ask you to do? What should they ask you for if you say, I want to test drive or buy a car? Okay, what do they do with the driver's license? Photocopy. I'd be shocked if they're scanning every driver's license when they show up to do a test drive. You should. You absolutely should. But I would say a majority of dealerships that I go into, they take the driver's license. Do they look at it? No. Why would you look at it if you're going to make a photocopy? It's going in the deal jacket. And then what I do is I go to my deal jacket where I've got these check boxes, where I've got ID, insurance, blah, 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 and I do whack. Right? Awesome. It happens. I was with JM&A 3 years. I remember. So, they're not really paying attention, and we're relying on them. They might be our only line of defense. I mean, if they make a copy and nobody looks at it, I don't know if the F&I guy looks at it. I don't know if the controller looks at it. The banks don't want the copy of the driver's license. They don't want it. Oh, PII, I don't want to touch it. Great. Man, crooks love that stuff. So, that's level 0. Okay, let's go to level 1 where we're actually using some intelligence here. So, blinking, lighting, wrinkles. I would also say I have lots of imperfections called moles. Moles can get transposed. You can look for those kinds of things. Airbrushing, I think we all know to look for that. Obviously, audio, you're not gonna, I'm not gonna come off as potentially a soprano voice per se, so you can look for if there was issues with the synthetic voice, and then lighting. So lighting can change because, again, as they're trying to fillet those images when they in the encoding process, they're going for lighting. We're gonna have a chance for questions.
Can you see an IP address anywhere, when this is looking at, because you're waiting?
If you're doing purely remote, yes, we can talk about ways to do that. Some can, some can't, but I would say that is absolutely logical. Like, are they on? And sometimes, it even happens on your own land. So that's a great call out, is IP address and kind of what the digital identity looks like. So level 2, there's additional data sets, right? There's lots of technologies out there where you can get different data sets. Last 4 of the social, phone number. Obviously, we've talked about different things the bureaus can do with synthetic fraud. Lots of different ways to corroborate it. But what happens a lot of times is we run them in silos. I'm going to go check this, yes, no. I'm going to go check that, yes, no. I'm going to check that, yes, no. But I don't know if I have 3 yeses or 1 yes and 2 no's. And so the goal is to make 1 + 1 = 3 when you're doing all these different checks and have it more in a streamlined workflow, so you might actually flag something. And if you ask the same question in different ways, you are very likely to get a different answer. Typically, the way they train these things is a one path. So if you come at them from a different path, it's possible. Again, nothing is perfect, but it is possible to catch it. Biometrics, selfies, signature recognition, document verification. Some states allow thumbprints. Those are some other areas. You should already be doing the red flags, out of wallet, know your customer, OFAC, DMV, insurance checks. You should. Again, if that can happen in the same workflow, you can probably find a lot more things, because who's the person that is in charge of potentially looking at all these different things to tell if there's an issue or not? Humans are not going away in this process, folks. If you think technology is going to be the savior, we're going to be in trouble, okay? All right, so the third level is finding ways, especially in an offsite deal, how do you get to a 3-dimensional experience, right? It's hard to do because they're not here. They don't want to come into the dealership for whatever reason. Okay, it's not saying that we're bad, stinky people. They just don't want to come into the dealership or they're across state lines. So, how do we do that? We have found ways to have secure closing agents throughout the country, and what we found is just by having that soft touch at the very end, we run off a ton of crooks just by them knowing that a living, breathing person's showing up. They're like, well, you know what? I'll probably just go to the dealer not doing that, and I'm sure I'll probably get away with it. Because if they've gotten that far, they've got a pretty well curated identity at that point that it's going to work. And they are probably doing it 5 to 10 different times to see how many they can get away with. Right? So finding a way to get into the three-dimensional and the full 5 senses and going beyond sight and sound, we have found eliminates a lot of this. Right? As a matter of fact, there's lots of deals where we would catch synthetic and other things that we might not even check for, but because we showed up in person, we found it. So kind of interesting how that works. Forensic layering. And all this means is take all the hoops you got, layer them together, and create a series of events that makes them jump through all the hoops the right way and not one at a time, similar to what I just previously said. And make it a step-up verification process. It has to be a continuous series of if-thens. And if at any point in time there is a no, then you stop. You don't have to sell the car. And I think that's part of why I don't necessarily like the dependency on the sales and F&I person being the lone rangers on this. Like, we have to support them and give them and empower them to say, hey, no, it's okay to not sell the car. If it looks weird, it's okay. There's lots of times where it's cosigners or it's military and elder abuse and military abuse. There's lots of different ways they can pull this off, right? And we just have to continue to be vigilant. But I call it just outfaking. It's the outfake AI algorithm. So your step-up verification is your own AI algorithm that is looking at all the conditions of the deal and saying, time out. If it's below a certain threshold of confidence, we're just not going to do it. It isn't worth it. Okay? Why are they so hell-bent on this specific car? Okay? Last thing, and this is where I need all of you. This is everybody. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I brought up in the beginning how many have admitted that they had a fraud and how many haven't admitted it. We don't talk about it. We're embarrassed. We're like, I can't believe that happened. We don't want our insurance companies to know, because then our insurance rates go up, right? And our reputation gets damaged. And shoot, if I'm the sales guy that let it by, I'm not going to let myself take the blame. I'm going to let somebody else get blamed. Okay? So we as an industry have to teach dealers how to communicate better. I'm actually in Houston, and HPD does an amazing job, if anybody knows Darren Schlosser there, of getting the dealers to communicate about fraud. And they are talking about it all the time. So when I show up, I'm in the conversation, and a lot of times I would have seen it. I was like, oh yeah, they were using Maverick on that one, and we spotted, raised the flag. They call HPD, and we don't get to be involved in the entrapment, and we should have had that Bad Boys song from the video. But they will actually, go sometimes catch deals in our process and then go bust them. But they're communicating, like they talk all the time. I think they have some kind of text thread going on. But think about it as an industry. We should be communicating. Like, I would love to be standing up here next year and saying, hey, we've created our own generative AI to outfake the deepfake. And every time we get anything that looks hairy, we suck it up and we give it out to everybody and say, this identity, this situation, if you see that, run. Or actually, don't run. Let them keep going until you can go catch them. That'd be more fun. Okay? So it's really incumbent upon us. All right, let's see if this one works.
This is the world we're entering in.
There we go.
It's now going to have to be physical interactions that are the only things we trust.
Because seeing is no longer believing.
Kate, I just want to let out a big sigh.
Yeah.
It's like, you're constantly having to be on the defense. So you talked about a code word, good idea. What's some other things people
Feels like we're having some
So, for example, if you get a
issues.
call, a video call, Lester, from someone you think you know and
Just
it doesn't
text like
feel
us.
right, maybe they're asking for your personal information or
Just
money,
from my laptop.
hang up, call the person back, make sure you really know who you're talking to.
Okay.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, it looks like the PC's having some issues. Must be some generative AI running on there. How we doing? It's not as funny the second time.
Hey, it's great.
Oh, you do. You do. Okay. I think we got past this one already. Yep. That's the video. All right, so that was my tagline. Dang it. So the way we fix this is you. Okay? So all the dealers are asking us for technology. They're saying, well, tell me what additional tech and what data sources and this and that. If our level of give a shit is not here, it's about here today, I think. If it's not up here, then they're not going to care either. We have to make them care. Now, I'm going to tell you this I learned at JM&A. We're in the real estate business. We want to get our products in the right place at the right time, just like we're telling them to sell 100% of the products, 100 people sell 100% of the time, 300% rule. We need to be doing the same thing when we talk about fraud. Because if we own that real estate, then we control that conversation and our products get on there. One of the things that's happening in offsite, and the reason it's hurting our business as an F&I industry, is a lot of times the products get kicked off, or they don't even try. I told you about the offsite report earlier. They're not even trying. And so if we can help control that and get in front of it and be good stewards and leaders in this front, they're going to be much more comfortable talking to us about how we truly execute offsite F&I selling. Because I would say more often than not, we're not even getting away with a presentation. So I think it's incumbent upon us to say, if we take it seriously, we'll get the dealers to take it seriously. And I would be honored to, one thing I would say, that is not me. That was not an encoded. I think they used Thane's hairline for this one. It was definitely not mine. I don't know what images they got there. But actually, I think it's like the same AI as the DOWC, and it looks just like that guy. So I think it's probably the same chat GPT that got used, right? So it is incumbent upon us, and not just the vendors, it's not just the agents, it's not just the F&I compliance specialists, it's all of us, and we have to communicate, and we've got to take it seriously. But the good news is, it's not that, it's hard, but it's not unachievable, okay? So, a couple other things. Just to exacerbate the challenge, as everybody knows about Carvana and the new franchise dealership. So if they're coming in to that portion of the market, they are going to only further, add further pressure to the offsite delivery need, and consumers are going to get more and more used to that. It's like, well, Carvana can take a Jeep to my house. Why can't you? And then we have to even get better and better. Now, I will tell you, in my former life at Reynolds, with Carvana as a customer of some of our different data products, they got fraud issues, right? Okay, they got lots of problems. They got kicked out of several states and had to beg for permission, and who knows what's going on behind the scenes with those books. But they got issues, right? They just don't talk about it. We can do just as good as them and do it better. And we can, we all know the benefits of the franchise automotive industry and why that's great for our country and our economy. So this is just going to add more pressure. But again, I go back to, it's us. Okay? We have to go be the stewards and the shepherds and the leaders and saying, hey, we can go do this together. There are ways to mitigate the fraud. I would say when we applied, and I think there's some other vendors in the room, I saw Elin, we've seen the results of when you apply all this different logic. I mean, the average industry stat on fraud is somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. And when you apply all these things correctly, are you going to get rid of all of it? No. But if you're 99.998%, that's a lot better than 97%. Actuarially speaking, it's about a $9 billion problem. Pete, is it a higher number? Or I think it's higher. I heard 9, but I think it's higher. I think the fraud is going on. The lenders are finding out 6 months later. So whatever we say it is, 6 months from now, it's going to be a different number. Okay? So again, I would be honored, and this is not for MapSign or any other company, but I'd be happy to go help y'all have these conversations if you'd like. Everybody will get a copy of this, and we just have to go again demystify this to the F&I guys. They're confused, they're concerned, and they're getting a lot of pressure about it. So I think y'all can do it. So any questions?
Oh, I'm sure there's a few. Hey, let's hear it for Rudy.
Okay, so I think it was 2 years ago when we were at the conference and they said something like synthetic fraud.
Yep.
And I kind of think I'm pretty up on all the tech and stuff, and I get to travel and see all kinds of stuff. I'm like, what the hell is synthetic fraud? And he gave us the best explanation. Now you bring this up, but why is nobody else, I should say why is it, but until they brought it up a couple years ago, when Lisa and everyone synthetic fraud wasn't even in my forefront. I mean, fraud always has been, hairs on my back of my neck are up, and now we got the deepfake stuff going on. So you guys have always appeared to be at the forefront of this, and it's kind of irritating that nobody else is bringing this up. And when I try to explain it to my dealers, like, do you know what synthetic fraud is? Or even if and they're like, what? I'm like, here, go here, go to Mass, whatever.
Yep.
So that conversation I thought it was initiated a couple years ago, but I'm kind of disheartened to see that it hasn't picked up as much. And I'm just thankful you guys are here and bringing this up again.
Yeah, look, we look for synthetic fraud in different ways. A lot of people attack synthetic fraud different ways. One way, and I'd give a shout out to Eland in this, they get attached with the bureaus with 700 credits, so they can see it a different way. Now, they're at a different part of that workflow, so there may be, maybe before we know if it's happening offsite or not, and yes, you could still have some identity theft at that point, but synthetic fraud is just one type of fraud, right? I'll give you a different example. If anybody wants to hear about a really crazy kind of fraud is, because Route 1's payoff quotes are good for allegedly 10 days, but then they're not responsible for if there's a chargeback or if a posted payment doesn't actually process. Somebody will put like a $40,000 payment on their last payment. It'll show a lower payoff. They trade the car, right? They get fake equity. That payment bounces, but because of the state laws, they've had to turn that title so fast or they get fined. Thank you, Carvana, for creating that issue. And then what happens? Who holds the bag? Well, they can go find that consumer maybe, but they're out. They're screwed. I'm like, Route 1, we got to go fix that problem. I don't know if Route 1's in the room. They're mad at me. But I did give them an idea. I clearly articulated how to fix it. So.
And to your point, Tisha, that's what the EFI conference is about. It's to learn about things like this. And just so you know, virtually everybody in the room, we are all connected on a private Facebook page. That's where this all came from. And when we do see fraud, I haven't seen an AI-generated fraud hit yet, but whenever we do see a fraud or somebody's trying to do something, we know it's a fake, yeah, it gets posted and communicated to 18,000 people, 17,000 people in real time.
Yeah, and then that's when we mentioned, and I'm not, it's when I had explained to somebody what synthetic fraud was, and I still, was like, how come nobody else is talking about this? And I usually, and we still know when I post, like, did you just go to the freaking website here? This is what MAD does. It's not just, they don't just witness your signatures, they're protecting you from synthetic fraud, and now we got to fix.
Yep.
A couple of quick questions based off of what your part of your presentation. If we're doing a turn that we're going to be shipping the car out or we're doing papers out, we're sending the paperwork out, doing a video sounds mandatory today.
It should be.
In your opinion?
It should be.
To safeguard ourselves.
I mean, in our workflow, as we're going through, and there's lots of different options out there for technology, but typically in our workflow, we said, no, I want to be able to have the video button right there. So as I'm sending them the link for the selfie to do the thing on their phone, as we text them, I can also send them a video invite and say, hey, if you want me to walk you through it. But think about if you've got the images of the selfie, let's just say they created something good enough to get past the selfie. I mean, it is possible to get that good. So then you have the video in parallel, and you might spot something differently. Just asking them a question, just doing your normal customer interview.
So you're doing,
find out a lot.
So we're on video, and I saw it on one of your videos that didn't work all that well. By the way, we had all types of internet connection issues yesterday afternoon, so we were all totally okay with the video freezing. But I said, I think it was the real estate said, raise your right hand. Would those be good techniques to put into play to ensure, or is the AI there that is going to say, oh, I'll raise the hand?
They've probably figured out the hand thing, would be my guess at this point, because that was a thing a couple of years ago. There's lots of different tips and tricks. I don't want to give too much of the secret sauce of what we do internally, because we're trying to spot things, but one other piece I would say, and I keep talking about the people and the people and the people and going back to you. So I think about 50% of our company's personnel are allocated in some capacity towards forensics and identifying fraud in some way, either helping the dealer or our secure closing agents or even the consumer. And so a lot of it's just effort and focus and not over-reliance on technology. Let's make the technology work for us as opposed to against us.
I just want to say it really happens. Our dealership was a victim a couple of years ago. It was during COVID and vehicle values went up and it was recovered and we got lucky, right? But twice, myself and the other F&I manager, we have stopped deterred deals that were later confirmed to be actual fraud situations. So you just got to be super aware and use all the tools in your arsenal.
Yep. One other area that we talk about this a lot is actually with the banks. So if you, I don't know how many of you get involved in the lending agreements, but a couple of things that happen in your lending agreements that most dealers have not read. One, banks are very prohibitive on offsite sales. Very prohibitive. Like probably a lot of the offsite sales happening because there's not an easy way to report those things. They're happening, the banks don't know about it. The only time they find out about it is if they got to pop one and they're like, where'd you take this card? You were supposed to sign at the dealership, bro. Okay, hey, you're on full recourse now. That does happen. Now, banks do not want to have that conversation with dealers because they want to get deals. So you've got this weird, arbitrage is not the right word, but it is a weird conflict going on with the banks because they know that they need to do offsite sales. They don't know how to protect themselves because, again, a lot of these times people will actually pay the payment for several months, right, and get past the chargeback period, and then it's on the bank, and the bank's, a lot of times like, well, hey, they might be past the chargeback period, but this agreement says that you owe me the money. So that's a different way that they're getting screwed, right? And I kind of side with the banks in a lot of ways. Like if you signed the agreement and you said you weren't going to do it, and you did it anyways, it goes back to a people thing. We got to enforce that process. You got some questions over here?
You said a couple of different times, ask the same question in a different path. Can you give just one quick example of that you believe can help outfake the deal?
I mean, it's just your basic F&I interview questions that you could be asking, or it could just be simple of like, you should be doing your interview anyways, right? Like, and I'm not talking about in the event of your death, who would you like to receive the title, some of those older questions, but asking them how long. Do they still ask that question?
I hope not.
That one was drilled into my brain.
I think it was mission.
For the event you were injured and unable to make the payments, how would you plan to go? Anyways.
What's the approximate balance of your checking account?
So bad. But, it could just be you're asking them how long they plan to keep the car, how many miles, what kind of driving conditions. A lot of times they're not going to be able to answer those types of things because they're currently not thinking about that F&I interview process. Those are some easy ones. And then you could serve it back to them. So if I heard you correctly, you said you're going to own this car for about 5 years and drive 75,000 miles. Not you're doing a 5-year loan and you drive 15,000 miles a year. That's just some basic, not to overly trivialize the interview process, but there's lots of different ways you can test for that.
I was walking back up to thank you for coming and everybody clapped for you, but before we get there, I'll walk by. This is Bob Lettuce with 700 credit. Say how about? So, do the 700 credit have safeguards in place for synthetic fraud? Do you guys have some stuff going?
Yes, we introduced the product last year. We've got 1,000 dealers on it already in 1 year. We're adding about 50 every month. And what it is, it's an ID verification process, driver's license scanner, facial recognition, DMV, synthetic fraud, regular fraud. It encompasses about 5 different databases into one solution. But you could go online, you go to 700 credit. We're always, in fact, we just did a release today about synthetic fraud. So we're continually releasing more and more information every week about synthetic fraud. You can go to 700 credit. We have a little site called Ken's Corner, and it's got all kinds of information about that, how you can help protect, and how it's growing. The good thing about what we on our process, it all pushes to the deal jackets. So to keep the dealers paperless, keep them safeguard compliant. Unfortunately, 50% of the dealers are still not safeguard compliant, and it's still a big issue. And so education is the key. People, at these shows, it's a learning, education. What Rudy was saying, everything was right on, and it's just a matter of time where everybody just gets up to speed on this.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was at Reynolds, I was on the board of Open Dealer Exchange, and we were working on that project. So I would say, outside of offsite deliveries, just every car deal should be following some kind of process, right? I used the driver's license copier machine example, so I would highly recommend that upstream process every single person, right? And then when you get to the offsite remote, like I think you need to have a process specific to that, because the ability for fraud goes up exponentially once you leave the four walls. But I would absolutely have that at the beginning of every process. Just keep in mind there's a lot of deals where they'll try to do an in-store person and then they'll flip it to offsite, right? That happens a lot. I've seen deals where we run it in-store and they forget to do it when they go out off-site, and then we'll have a notary get there and be like, oh, that might not be the same person. Well, yeah, it was somebody, and somebody else is actually buying it. So there's lots of different little squirrely ways they'll do it.
Appreciate it, Rudy. Let's give Rudy from Mass.